He's one of these kind of men you want to watch out for when your back is turned, Duke. Thanks, old feller. I'll keep it in mind what you say. I don't want it to look like I was on one side or the other, you understand, Duke? But I thought I'd tell you. Sim Hargus is one of them kind of men that a woman don't dare to show her face around where he is without the risk of being insulted. He's a foul-mouthed, foul-minded man, the kind of feller that ought to be treated like a rattlesnake in the road. Lambert thanked him again for his friendly information, understanding at once his watchful uneasiness and the absence of Alta from the front of the house. He was familiar with that type of man, such as Wood had described Hargus as being. He had met some of them in the Bad Lands. There was nothing holy to them in the heavens or the earth. They did not believe there was any such thing as a virtuous woman, and honor was a word they had never heard defined. "I'll go out and look him up," Lambert said. "If he happens to come in here asking about me, tell him I'll be either in the store or the saloon." "That's where he is, Duke, in the saloon." "I supposed he was." "You'll kind of run into him natural, won't you, Duke, and not let him think I tipped you off?" "Just as natural as the wind." Lambert went out. From the hitching rack he saw Wood at his post of vigil in the door, watching the road with anxious mien. It was a Saturday night. The town was full of visitors. Lambert went on to the saloon, hitching at the long rack in front of where 20 or 30 horses stood. The custom of the country made it almost an obligatory courtesy to go in and spend money when one hitched in front of a saloon, an excuse for entering that Lambert accepted with a grim feeling of satisfaction. While he didn't want it to appear that he was crowding a quarrel with any man, the best way to meet a fellow who had gone spreading it abroad that he was out looking for one was to go where he was to be found. It wouldn't look right to leave town without giving Hargus a chance to state his business. It would be a move subject to misinterpretation and damaging to a man's good name. There was a crowd in the saloon which had a smoky, blurred look through the open door. Some of the old gambling gear had been uncovered and pushed out from the wall. A faro game was running with a dozen or more players at the end of the bar. Several poker tables stretched across the gloomy front of what had been the ballroom of more hilarious days. These players were a noisy outfit. Little money was being risked, but it was going with enough profanity to melt it. Lambert stood at the end of the bar near the door, his liquor in his hand, lounging in his careless attitude of abstraction. But there was not a lax fiber in his body. Every faculty was alert, every nerve set for any sudden development. The scene before him was disgusting rather than diverting, in its squalid imitation of the rough and ready times which had passed before many of these men were old enough to carry the weight of a gun. It was just a sporadic outburst, a pustule come to a sudden head that would burst before morning and clear away. Lambert ran his eyes among the 25 or 30 men in the place. All appeared to be strangers to him. He began to assort their faces as one searches for something in a heap, trying to fix on one that looked mean enough to belong to a Hargus. A mechanical banjo suddenly added its metallic noise to the din, fit music, it seemed, for such obscene company. Some started to dance slumberingly, with high lifted legs and ludicrous turkey struts. Among these Lambert recognized Tom Hargus, the young man who had made the ungallant attempt to pass Vesta Philbrook's gate with his father. He had more whiskey under his dark skin than he could take care of. As he jiggled on limber legs, he threw his hat down with a whoop, his long black hair falling around his ears and down to his eyes, bringing out the Indian that slept in him, sharper than the liquor had done it. His face was flushed, his eyes were heavy, as if he had been under a headway a good while. Lambert watched him as he pranced about, chopping his steps with feet jerked up straight like a string-hauled horse. The Indian was working, trying to express itself in him through this exaggerated imitation of his ancestral dances. His companions fell back in admiration, giving him the floor. The cowboy was feeding money into the music box to keep it going, giving it coin, together with certain grave, drunken advice, whenever it showed a symptom of a pause. Young Hargus circled about the middle of the room, barking in little short yelps. Every time he passed his hat, he kicked it, sometimes hitting, oftener missing it. at last driving it over against Lambert's foot, where it lodged. Lambert pushed it away. A man beside him gave it a kick that sent it spinning back into the trodden circle. Tom was at that moment rounding his beat at the further end. He came face about just as the hat skimmed across the floor, stopped, jerked himself up stiffly, looked at Lambert with a leap of anger across his drunken face. Immediately there was silence in the crowd that had been assisting on the sidelines of his performance. They saw that Tom resented this treatment of his hat by any foot save his own. The man who had kicked it had fallen back with shoulders to the bar, where he stood presenting the face of innocence. Tom walked out to the hat, kicked it back within a few feet of Lambert, his hand on his gun. He was all Indian now. The streak of smoky white man was engulfed. His handsome face was black with the surge of his lawless blood as he stopped a little way in front of Lambert. "Pick up that hat," he commanded, smothering his words in an avalanche of profanity. Lambert scarcely changed his position, save to draw himself erect and stand clear of the bar. To those in front of him he seemed to be carelessly lounging, like a man with time on his hands, peace before him. "Who was your nigger last year, young feller?" he asked, with good humor in his words. He was reading Tom's eyes as a prize-fighter reads his opponent's, watching every change of feature, every strain of facial muscle. Before young Hargus had put tension on his sinews to draw his weapon, Lambert had read his intention. The muzzle of the pistol was scarcely free of the scabbard when Lambert cleared the 2 yards between them in one stride. A grip of the wrist, a twist of the arm, and the gun was flung across the room. Tom struggled desperately, not a word out of him, striking with his free hand. Sinewy as he was only a toy in Lambert's hands. "I don't want to have any trouble with you, kid," said Lambert, capturing Tom's other hand and holding him as he would have held a boy. "Put on your hat and go home." Lambert released him and turned as if he considered the matter ended. At his elbow a man stood, staring at him with insolent, threatening eyes. He was somewhat lower of stature than Lambert, thick in the shoulders, firmly set on the feet, with small mustache, almost colorless and harsh as hog bristle. His thin eyebrows were white, his hair but a shade darker, his skin light for an outdoorsman. This, taken with his pale eyes, gave him an appearance of bloodless cruelty, which the sneer on his lips seemed to deepen and express. Behind Lambert, men were holding Tom Hargus, who had made a lunge to recover his gun. He heard them trying to quiet him, while he growled and whined like a wolf in a trap. Lambert returned the stranger's stare, withholding anything from his eyes that the other could read, as some men born with a certain cold courage are able to do. He went back to the bar, the man going with him shoulder to shoulder, turning his malevolent eyes to continue his unbroken stare. "Put up that gun," the fellow said, turning sharply to Tom Hargus, who had wrenched free and recovered his weapon. Tom obeyed him in silence, picked up his hat, beat it against his leg, put it on. "You're the Duke of Chimney, Butte, aren't you?" the stranger inquired, turning again with his sneer and cold, insulting eyes to Lambert, who knew him now for Sim Hargus, foreman for Barry Kerr. "If you know me, there is no need for us to be introduced," Lambert returned. "Duke of Chimney, Butte," said Hargus with immeasurable scorn. He grunted his words with such an intonation of insult that it would have been pardonable to shoot him on the spot. Lambert was slow to kindle. He put a curb now on even his naturally deliberate vehicle of wrath, looking the man through his shallow eyes down to the roots of his mean soul. "You're the feller that's come here to teach us fellers to take off our hats when we see a fence," Hargus said, looking meaner with every breath. "You got it right, partner," Lambert calmly replied. "Duke of Chimney, Butte. Well, partner, I'm the king of Hotfoot Valley, and I've got traveling papers for you right here." "Seemed to be a little sudden about it," Lambert said, a lazy drawl to his words that inflamed Hargus like a blow. "Not half as sudden as you'll be, kid.